and I have been bought.
Bought?
Bought.
Been bought. You've been bought.
I've been bought. I sold the company. I sold the company. I sold the podcast. I sold myself, and I'm about to enter into a very exciting new relationship with a company I firmly believe in. And I think we're going to do some really, really wonderful, wonderful things together. And I hope that doesn't go against my NDA. Oh God, pray to God it does not go against my NDA. But
that was April Vokey talking about a huge change upcoming for her and her business this year. Stay tuned for that and an amazing show about her unique take on life and fly fishing. This is episode number 30 of the Wet Fly Swing Fly Fishing Show.
Welcome to the Wet Fly Swing Fly Fishing Show, where you discover tips, tricks, and tools from the leading names in fly fishing today. We'll help you on your fly fishing journey with classic stories covering steelhead fishing, fly tying, and much more.
How's it going, everyone? Thanks for stopping by the Fly Fishing Show. Before I get into the intro, I want to remind you to head over to the blog at wetflyswing.com/30 for this episode and leave a comment. This will help let me know you're listening and keeps the conversation going. In today's episode, I interview April Vokey, host of the Anchored podcast and one of the biggest names in fly fishing today. April talks about her passion for fly fishing and gives her opinion on women in fly fishing, sexism, and a whole host of other topics around fly fishing that actually might surprise you. We talk about catching marlin on the fly, the Bulkley River for steelhead conservation, and why starting out as a gear fisherman is a good thing. Don't miss this as April talks a little bit about a letter she received from Joan Wolfe after her 60 Minutes episode, where Joan actually called her out on her behavior and actions on the 60 Minutes broadcast. So some good stuff today. Without further ado, here's April Vokey from aprilvokey.com. How's it going, April?
I'm awesome. How are you?
Good to have you on here. I've been wanting to get you on the show for quite a while. People have been asking like when you're going to come on, so this is pretty awesome to finally get you on here.
Oh, that's cool. Thanks.
Yeah. My story, I think, I've mentioned this a few times about the podcasting. I've kind of had a goal of mine for the last couple of years, but I think your podcast was really one of the first ones, at least in the fishing world, that got me going. I listened to a lot. So I just wanted to right off the bat say thanks for that because you inspired me. So I appreciate it.
Oh, it means a lot to me. Thank you.
Cool. So I guess, I just want to I always start off with just, talking about your history. I know I've heard the stories and, heard about your passion and stuff, but maybe you can just tell folks that don't know you how you got into fly fishing and how, the whole Anchored podcast and all that came to be.
Yeah. I didn't start off with fly fishing. I definitely started off with conventional fishing, and I still fish conventional, but you get to a point where you're just looking for something a little more challenging, I think. And I'd seen fly fishing before on the Chilliwack or the Vedder River in British Columbia, and it just looked so romantic. And it's looking back now, knowing what I know now, it probably wasn't very romantic. The guys were probably swearing at each other and getting in each other's way, and hitting themselves in the head with flies. But from afar, it looked really romantic. And I have a dancing background, not the dancing that some people would like to think that I have, but like actual like jazz, the hip hop, like dancing. And I always really loved rhythm, and it just looked like dancing in the water. So that was me. I decided I was going to learn how to do it, which was different back then. There was no internet to do that. So it was definitely, once you made up your mind that you wanted to excel at something back then in my day, you had to actually really, like go to the library and physically go into shops and meet people. You couldn't just hop online.
Yeah.
And the rest was really history, it's the same story as so many, you get an old crappy fly rod, you don't know what you're doing, you watch some VHS tapes, you still don't know what you're doing, and you ruin fly lines on concrete and just, flail in the air until you get it right. Exactly.
Yeah. And I have heard a lot of stories. I think I'm close to, 25 or 30 episodes in or whatever. But yeah, from people that just got started to people that have been doing it a long time. So just so we know, like year wise, what year was it when you kind of first picked up the fly rod and started flailing?
I was 18.
Oh,
So I'm
okay.
35 now. So what's the math on
I
that?
know. I've
I've been
joked
dealing
about
with a
this again.
baby all night.
I don't know. Yeah, so you're probably close to 20 years, getting close to 20 years, which is pretty awesome.
Oh, that's so weird to hear
Isn't
that.
that? Maybe I
It's
should
really
say
weird to hear that.
it
Yeah.
is. Yeah, you're closer to 20 than you are anything else.
Oh, gross. But yeah, no. I mean, the thing is you learn so much about. It wasn't that big of a step. A lot of people who don't fish come to me and they're like, "How do I get into fly fishing?" And I'm going, "Well, have you thought about fishing a bait caster? Like, I mean, I fished a center pin for ages.
Mm-hmm.
Learning fish behavior is honestly, it's easier with gear rods. Like I used to go through a run with my gear rod after I'd gone through with a fly rod, So
Mm-hmm.
I definitely took my time in the progression for sure. So yeah, I'd say my gear days, which obviously were way before, which makes me sound really ancient, but
Mm-hmm.
they taught me a lot more than the fly did. You know what I mean? Like the
Yep.
fly was like the artistic part, but the gear rod was my
Yep.
meat and potatoes for sure.
I hear you. Yeah, no, I've had that conversation too with others on here that, you just have a lot more touches and you run into a lot more fish. So you get a feel for, just kind of behavior, like you said, which is a great point. Yeah, no,
and water, right? Like how can you possibly know river currents if you're not, what better way to figure out a current than having a float?
Yep.
You know what I mean? Like having a dink float and having a piece of bait, or I used to float, like I drift color, spoons or whatever, blades underneath the float. And you really get a feel for what, why is it pulling in that direction? What's that eddy? How does that eddy working? How does it work around the rock? Oh, look, there's a fish behind that rock. You really, or, like, especially with like a center pin, when you got to still be doing some sort of mending, you learn line management with your conventional rod. So I kind of mentioned this because I get real shitty when people give gear anglers grief because, what better way to start than that?
Yeah. No, it's interesting. And this is maybe a good question I've thought about before. And, on the conservation end, which I know you get into a lot in Anchored, at least you've had some of those conversations. I don't talk a lot about it here for various reasons, but I focus a lot more on kind of the tips and things like that. But it is an interesting thing and a question I have, because you think about the fly fishing, and we've talked about this, lots of conservation minded people. Do you think with the gear fishing that there's not as many of those people, or they're just not as, you just don't hear from them as much?
No, I definitely don't think that they don't care or that they're not as involved. I certainly would put my foot down on that. I see a ton of, especially in British Columbia, I see some of the most influential groups in BC's history were, the Kingfishers, the Drift Fishers, those societies. I'm not too familiar with the people in them, but I know that they did a ton of work to really help BC Steelhead in particular. So I definitely think that they're just as active. I think that gear fishers or gear anglers can get a bad rap because they tend to look as though they're more about the numbers.
Yeah.
And maybe in fairness, maybe they are, but it's such a personal thing. Like it's really hard to to stereotype anybody. But I think that they're just as active and just as involved. Maybe you and I just don't maybe see it because we're not in those circles as much these days. Or, I mean, if you really wanted to play devil's advocate, maybe it's this. As I grew up and matured and essentially got bored of catching lots of fish and then wanted to make it more difficult, I was looking, I just had been immersed in it for longer. So I appreciated it more. I appreciated the fish more. I wanted to help them more. So I don't want to speak on behalf of anyone else, but for myself, I just didn't have the maturity back then, or the time, or the knowledge. So maybe fly fishers have put, in some cases, like in my case, have put in they are fly fishers because they put in so much time, and therefore, I mean, what else are you going to do? Like after doing it for 20 years, don't you think that you really have to stop and look at yourself and be like, okay, maybe I should start thinking about giving back?
Yeah, you're right. That's a good chunk of time. And I kind of joke, or my friends have joked with me before, some of them that haven't caught as many steelhead, because as they listen to my show, they hear, you and other people talk about how, well, it's not about the numbers game. And, I'm good catching the fish or two. And I agree with that now. I think I've changed my thinking too, but they kind of look at me and say, hey, I haven't caught hundreds of fish, and I want to have some of those 10 fish days. You know what I mean? What do you say to people out there that are kind of early on and they still want to have some of those numbers. Is that
Yeah.
okay?
Yeah. Your question is like, you just the most you couldn't have asked me at a more perfect time.
Oh, yeah?
I just had this conversation yesterday. Yeah. I was interviewing Bob Hooton yesterday,
Oh, yeah.
actually. And we kind of got into this because he's just published a book called Days of Rivers Past. And it's about, the shifting baseline that we can see in BC with Steelhead and days, in his day, obviously there were a lot more fish, and you have to read the book to really get a full grasp on what Bob's trying to say. But it was an interesting point. His thing is, with there being less fish, everyone is concentrating onto main rivers. Like, let's say, for example, the Bulkley has, obviously the majority of steelhead in BC for the most part. So say everyone's concentrated on the Bulkley, and Bob and I battle each other all the time. People probably don't know this, but there's literally not a person on earth I fight with more than Bob Hooton. I love him and hate him on a weekly basis, and I've told him so. And so I have written several articles about, let's get out and explore other rivers that maybe don't have as many fish, but there's no people on them. And he used to get really mad at that. And I thought at first that he was angry about it because he thought I was trying to convince people to explore other maybe secret rivers.
Right.
But his thing was his thing is, there are no rivers that people haven't seen before. And I'm going, but Bob, who cares if they're getting out? And he's saying, well, people are concentrating to these main rivers because they all want to catch fish. And I guess I don't want to go off on a tangent, but we basically had to look each other in the eye yesterday and sort some differences. And the reality is, Bob, maybe you and other guys go fishing to catch fish, but we don't all go and do that. And so I guess the big question, just bringing it back to your question, Dave, is it experience that makes it that person? Like, maybe you don't want to catch or care about catching as many fish because, like your friends say, you've caught hundreds of fish. But I've got to be completely honest with you. I'm 35 years old and I've been steelheading since I was 16. My mentality has not changed. I would still, if you asked me at 16 and you asked me today, April, would you rather go to the Bulkley right now for 8 hours and catch 2 fish? Or would you rather go and explore the Telkwa and see a fish? If you're lucky, which would you choose? Back then, when I'd only been doing it for a year, and now when I've been doing it for, as we've established, too many years, I would say the same thing. I don't need to catch fish. So I guess all of this to say, not everybody doesn't care about catching fish because they've been doing it longer or because they're older. Some people are just born with that they just want to explore. They don't need to catch the fish.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, I guess it's just dependent on the person, and everybody has a different take on it. So that's a good perspective. And I have heard of Bob. I've never met him or talked to him, but I've had people tell me he's the guy up there as far as some of the work that's being done on the I guess document. What is he? I mean, he's kind of conservation and documenting the runs and the ups and downs and that sort of thing.
Yeah, well, he was our biologist for so many years, right?
Right.
Yeah, so when he retired, he gotta love the guy. He wrote a tell-all book throwing everybody in the bus.
That's right.
And that was the Skeena Steelhead book. This is a different book now. But he just has no filter. He can't help himself. When something pisses him off, he calls you out.
Yeah.
I don't think he's right every time. Obviously, that's why we battle, because I disagree with him. But the man knows what he's talking about to some extent. But the big thing that we fight about is mentality. And I guess the whole point here is not everybody has the same mentality. You cannot assume everybody fishes for the same reason that you do, or does it, everyone has a different reason why they're out there. So it's important that we realize that.
Yeah. Yeah. I want to get into, you mentioned some, mentors and things like that. Before we jump in there, I did want to follow up. You mentioned the jazz dancing, and I have a couple of young girls and that are, they're just getting into dancing. And I'm interested here, did dancing help you in any way with fly fishing?
Yes, no. So music is obviously I love music. And so I went to university for music, and I'm actually a jazz vocalist.
Oh, wow.
And yeah, I'd say singing, music helped me more than dancing. I mean, it's a gray area, right? Like, it's one and the same in a lot of ways, but I sing almost, every moment I'm out on the river, I'm out there singing. And I definitely have found songs. I've got like certain songs in my collection that if I'm having a bad casting day, I'll start singing. Like, there's certain Corinne Bailey Rae songs that I'll start singing, and they immediately match my casting tempo to the song, and I just get right back into the groove. So yeah, it definitely helps my casting for sure.
Cool. Yeah. Music is good. Nice. So yeah, the mentors I do want to get into some, talk about your home river and some tips and things like that. But before we jump into all that, as far as mentors, and this is interesting, I don't want to have the whole conversation be focused on this, but, I think your life and, talking about starting fly fishing at 18 and, fishing before that, and yourself as a female in this, in fly fishing, how did you get started? Like, who were your mentors and who were the people that helped you? Because, it probably wasn't the same as a lot of the guys out there, right? You just go out with the guys, or was it? Or how'd that all come together, and who taught you how'd you learn?
Yeah. No, it's a multifaceted question. So like, I had been, like I said, I was out there gear fishing a lot, and I was solo. So I was out there alone. And really what it is, you drive by a river and you see a bunch of people fishing. So you think there's fish there. So you get out and you ask, what are they catching? So they're at the Vetter crossing and they're catching salmon. All right. So I've got a spin rod at home. I go home, I get my spin rod, I go back out, I'm going fishing. So it kind of starts really organic like that. You're just one of the sheep in the crowd. And then I was doing that a lot and starting to explore a little bit more. And I started to run into this guy on the river, as you do, if you frequent a river, there are regulars.
And which river was this?
The Chilliwack or the Vetter. It's the same river. It's got a bridge down the middle, and the river name changes, but it's the same river. Gotcha. Yeah. So I'm on the Vetter, and I used to skip school. So I would be there during the quieter times of the day. I wasn't just a weekend warrior. And Dave, being retired, was also out there on weekdays. And, he was saying, I keep running into you. Do you, you're alone, it's dangerous. Do you want a fishing buddy? And that's just like red flag central, guy in his 60s. I'm in my teens. I don't know. And I finally thought, well, I'll tell you what, I'll fish with you on this public run. And he was fishing with another buddy. And I learned a lot. I really learned a lot. I just watched them a lot of the day. And I thought it would probably be a good idea to have a fishing buddy in my life. But I was still really young, and I'd gone home and told my parents about him. They were really concerned. So they came out to the river with me the following week and met Dave. And they really liked him. And they kind of just watched him with me for a few hours. And he just became like a family friend. And he was my first mentor. And Dave had owned a tackle shop. And I guess back in the day, he had gotten this old Shakespeare fly rod. And he knew that I really wanted, this is a couple years later, right? But yeah. He knew that I really wanted to get into fly fishing. I'd been hounding him about it for 2 years. And he goes, look here, this rod is for you. There's no line on it. You've got to go get your own line, but it's all yours if you want to. Here are some VHS tapes. And it just kind of went from there. So, there's a whole lot of stories in and around that one, but Dave Puffer was certainly my mentor, not in fly fishing, but just in fishing in general. And, he used to get me so excited. I'd have a journal, and I'd be keeping track of water temperature and what time of the year, which fish are running. And after a full season of fishing together, it got to the point where it was winding down, coho were starting to phase out, and I started to get really depressed because it was coming to an end. And it's happening. The anglers start to, they start to thin out, and there's no leaves on the trees. It's cold as hell. And I remember telling him, Dave, I'm getting depressed. I'm not ready to stop. And he said, well, you don't have to. There's this thing called a steelhead. And imagine you hear about steelhead and you've been a salmon angler. You're like, wait, pink salmon, chum, sockeye, steelhead. How badass does that sound? And he goes, yeah, they come in November, December. He said, I'm not much for them. It's too cold and they're few and far between, but you don't have to stop. And that was it for me. That was cool. It. I was gone. Yeah. Wow. So Dave was my big mentor. And then I love reading accounts of I got April into fishing, and it's really, really cute because everybody, you have an experience with somebody one day and they think suddenly that they're your person. But I guess, in a way, everybody was my person in one way or another. And I think that's true of being a woman or a man. You pick up things from everybody along the way. But the fly shops were okay. I think that they may have fallen into that mentorship sort of role. I definitely drew back after I'd started going to the shops and trying to get information. And some guys don't help you because they think everyone else is helping you. And some guys do help you because they actually care. Some guys help you because they're trying to sleep with you. Like everyone's got their own reason for helping you. And I started to hear rumors about, April's getting help because people want to sleep with her. And that for me was enough to just take a complete step back. That was definitely when I took an enormous step back and was like, okay, I'm going to be really, really picky about who I allow to be a quote unquote mentor. Right. And again, just dove further into my relationship with Dave and myself, really, in a lot of ways. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. That, there's definitely a lot of questions and things, we could dig in. I'm not going to go that deep, but I just asked that because I recently talked to Steve Duda with the FlyFish Journal, and we had a little conversation about, how he mentioned that, the past of females in fly fishing hasn't been that great, and it has been a white male dominated sport. And, it just seems ridiculous, right? But I guess that's just kind of the way it was. So, and that's kind of why I asked that. And now myself with two little girls and the society, and you look at the politics with where it's going in the US and stuff, it's just pretty bad. But,
and it's an interesting time too, like with the Orvis campaign and stuff. And, I've got so much to say on the matter, but I'm so cautious about what I say, and only because it can be misconstrued, but
I was just gonna say, you're pretty much, you're a leader. You're one of the big names. I know there's a few other ladies out there that I'm going to have on the show here that are going to talk, that are definitely part of the movement, however you want to describe that. But you're a main figure in this. And do you feel like you have a responsibility there, or what do you feel like is your responsibility?
Yeah, I do feel like I have a responsibility to some degree, but again, I don't know how much time we have, but I'll try to break it down so it's in kind of in a summary. Look, maybe to some people, I deserved some of the backlash when I was younger. I had bright blonde hair. I had long fingernails.
Right.
I don't see why any of that matters. Like, I'm sorry that people assumed that all of that was for attention on the river, and that they didn't take the time or have the depth in themselves to look at a 19-year-old girl. 18, 19-year-old girl, because let's get real. I was not a woman. I was a girl who was waitressing, trying to make money to literally pay for school. And as a waitress, it helps to look a certain way. And also, I just enjoyed looking that a certain way. I've had purple hair, I've had red hair, I've had blonde hair. This whole April is looking the way she looks for attention was disgusting to me. When you are an attractive young woman, and I'm not saying I'm anything special, but every other woman listening to this who has been found attractive over the years will shake their head in agreement for the most part. You walk down the street, men whistle at you. You pump gas, they stare at you. You go to a bar, they pinch your ass. Like, I don't need any more attention than I already have.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I'm not a sociopath. I don't need the extra attention, especially when I'm on the river. But I'm not going to go home after waitressing or go home after feeling, sexy with my boyfriend, because that's why I was blonde with long nails. It made me feel sexy at the time, which I'm allowed and deserve to do. And I'm not going to, before I go to the river, dye my hair brown and take off my makeup for you idiots. Like, if you can't handle it because you don't have the depth or the knowledge, that's not my problem. So I dealt with a lot of that stuff back then, and it saddens me to still see it today. But it's hard to not see where a lot of these people are coming from, because there are a lot of people women on social media going out of their way to look sexy for social media. So it's a really gray area. Like, are they doing it for themselves because they feel like a tiger in the bedroom with their partner? Or are they doing it because they're trying to get followers? What is your motive? But again, we don't know that. So it's really hard to stereotype. So, I get people asking me on a weekly basis to comment on the 50-50 initiative with Orvis. I have deliberately, very quietly kept my mouth shut, and largely in part because I will be podcasting the girls behind, or the women behind that initiative, when I'm at ICAST next week.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, I have a lot to say about it, and I'm not being quiet because I have nothing to say or because I'm afraid.
That's perfect. No,
I'd like to tell you how I feel about it if you're cool with it.
Oh, yeah, no, definitely.
Okay, have you seen the Orvis commercial where the guy calls in and he's...
I haven't. I've heard about the a little bit about it, but no, I haven't seen it.
Okay, watch it and then read the comments.
Okay.
A guy calls in and he says, Orvis, I totally supported you guys until this initiative. And he says, basically, in a nutshell, he says, I'm not going to, it's...
Oh, that's right.
It's something about...
I did catch that. Yeah, no, I did. Yeah.
And the comments are really interesting. The comments, obviously, the majority of the comments are Orvis, I'll no longer buy your product. But a lot of the comments were, oh, funny, I don't see how that makes it, how men have ever discouraged women on the river. I've never discouraged women on the river.
Right.
I've got a couple of viewpoints on it. Like, okay, I actually hate the commercial. I think it's absolutely ridiculous. Absolutely ridiculous.
Mm-hmm.
And when I did see the 50-50 campaign, the first thing that crossed my mind was yet another fly fishing company trying to make money off of the woman movement. Like, rock on.
Right.
Whatever makes you guys sleep at night. But it's so clear that you don't actually give a shit. And again, I need to reserve my judgment till I talk to the girls. And I have met them before in past, and they seem like really badass chicks. So this isn't a slag on them, but whoever made that commercial, in my mind, and it feels like a man, I'm going to say, who made that commercial, they missed the mark. They just totally missed the mark, because I kind of agreed with the caller. I kind of agreed with the caller. Now, for all the comments of people saying, I've never seen anybody discourage women on the river, that's because you're not looking in the right places. No. It is hell out there.
Oh, yeah.
It is. I have had men yell at me. I have had a man throw me in the river.
Jeez.
I have had, police involved. I mean, to be fair, it was instigated. I have got a big mouth, but
sure.
I still was thrown in the river by a 200 some odd pound man. I've been threatened to be knocked out. I've had people hack my website. When I first got the blog started, it was hacked and replaced with a murdered, bloody, strangled Barbie doll.
Jesus.
Yeah, I have had people try to bully me and break my knees from the beginning, whether it's instigated or otherwise. It's not right.
Well, and do you still get some of that?
Sure, I do.
Yeah.
I get people all the time. I think, but just a bunch of fuckwits. That's just life. But it doesn't matter if it's soccer or if it's fly fishing or, sexism is here. It's real, but it's not everybody. Not all guys are like that. And, the more men I meet who have daughters, the more I see that they get it. Like, it's not all guys. So it's a really, really dangerous and scary path to take in conversation to say that, women aren't welcome on the river, because they are by most.
Yeah, no. And it brings me back to, the Me Too. I guess this is kind of part of the Me Too movement, #MeToo, that whole thing that was going on a while back in social. And that was, where people were coming out, calling out, basically the women were basically calling people out, and it started, I think, with, kind of the political with Trump and stuff. But it was interesting because I heard this one conversation where this guy basically came out, he had a podcast or a blog or whatever, and said, hey, I'm totally supporting, you guys, Me Too, I'm totally, this movement is great. And like a bunch of women came out of the woodworks and were like, hey, screw you, buddy. You tried to, rape me or do whatever and all this stuff. Right. And I don't know if he didn't realize it, but I think man, if he didn't even realize it, if that's part of the thing, like guys are doing stuff and they don't even realize that they're actually
doing it.
Yeah. You know what I mean? So I think that's not like that's an excuse, but I think that's part of the thing.
But it just goes to show like the grayness of it all. And I got to be honest with you, and I am going to get some serious hate for this. My husband, if he were here right now, he would be sitting beside me saying, shut up, stop talking. But look, the Me Too movement, I also sometimes have a hard time stomaching. Uh-huh. And it's because like you have to understand, I'm going to be totally honest. My mom was raped when she was like 9 years old, up through till she was 14 by a family member. I mean, you're looking at someone who's known about sexual abuse from the day I was born. My parents, obviously, it was important to them that I knew that this was a real thing. So I take sexual abuse and the Me Too movement really seriously. But I also need to be honest. I know just as many men who have been, victimized, if you will, by women. And I'm going to sound really guilty here, but in my single days, I was a damn predator. Yeah. I loved men. I wasn't promiscuous by any means, but find a really nice guy who was like super innocent looking. I wanted to absolutely crush him, like sexually. You know what I mean? So I was just as bad as those guys. I'm sure I've offended my fair share of men. Obviously, I wasn't raping anybody by any means, but I definitely, if I were a man and the roles were reversed, there would be people coming after me.
Yeah.
And that's just me. And I think I'm a pretty decent person with integrity. Imagine a lot of these women out there who maybe don't have that integrity. They're just as, there are just as many men being victimized as there are women. So I'm all for the Me Too movement, but I think we need to realize this is a humanity issue and not a battle of the sexes issue.
Yeah. No, I appreciate your perspective. Definitely. That's, it's good to, I think obviously we're kind of going in here deep, so I'll bring it back to some more, get back to some steelhead fish and stuff. But no, thanks for taking us there. And I appreciate you just speaking to that a little bit, because I'm going to have some other guests that are going to talk a little more about things. And, it's just, I think for me, like you said, with two little girls, and what scares the crap out of me as they grow older, and I'm worried about all these things. I think, they're hopefully going to be fly fishers as well. And we'll just kind of, I guess they'll deal with it when they get there.
Yeah, it's one person at a time. And I just want all those guys out there who do comment on the Orvis video saying, I don't know what you guys are talking about. I've never seen anything that would imply that women are victims of, of this. That's offensive too, to people like me, because you guys, it does exist, and it runs rampant. Very, very, very rampant. Sexism in the world today is a very real thing, not just in fly fishing, but it is in fly fishing as well, for sure.
Right. All right. Well, so yeah, just thinking about, you mentioned the Vetter is now what, so your home river, I mean, and you fished all over BC, but is that still your home river? What do you consider your home river, and how do you catch steelhead up there?
The Vetter was my home river. It's so hard now to see it the way it is. It's just really disheartening. It's got a lot of construction, and I can't, if I'm being totally honest, Dave, I can't bring myself to fish it. So I don't fish the Chilliwack anymore. It taints what I remember it being like.
And it was kind of always known as kind of a, like, more of a gear type of river, or is that just more of a recent thing?
No, I think it was always a gear type river. And I think it was probably busier back before I was even born, it was probably busier in the 70s than it is now, or at least that's what I've read. But I think as I've gotten older and I've traveled the world and I've experienced other rivers that are just a little bit more of an outdoor experience, I can't change my mindset on what I assume, what I define as a special experience, and it's not the Chilliwack anymore, for sure.
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, I live on the Bulkley, and the Bulkley is now my home river.
Okay.
And whether, again, there's always I say this in casting, I took this from a good friend of mine, who always says this with everything he teaches, there's always a big asterisk, and it depends. And I just want anyone listening to this interview, like, before you get your panties in a bundle and you get annoyed at anything I say, just know that I understand that there's always an it depends, and there's always a bunch of branches that stem from the main point that I'm making. But, with the Bulkley, it depends. Maybe, of course, I might be part of the blame. Maybe who knows, right? But all of that aside, the reality is the Bulkley is too busy for it to be a quality experience for me as well. So I'm not at the point where I completely boycott it because I live on it, but I definitely am at the point where I kind of, I have this fantasy world where I step outside first thing in the morning and I fish all morning. And then the second that I see the first drift boat go by or the first raft go by, I reel in and I go in for the day. I go hunting all day. And then when I know that the guys and gals can no longer pass my place because you've got to get to a pull-out point before dark.
Yeah.
I know about what time that is every evening. And then I go back out for the last hour of light.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Perfect. Yeah, that's I've spent a little bit of time up there fishing as well. We were there, I guess it's been about 10 years ago, and it seemed like there was definitely some people around. But did you see from in the last 10 years a big increase, or has it just been slowly increasing with people on the river?
Again, it's an interesting question. Apparently it was a lot busier before I was even born. I have seen years where, it again depends on time of year and fish run size. But I'd say Yeah, last year was quiet. The year before was insane. I think I counted 62 boats on my way downstream one day.
Jeez.
I didn't fish. I just literally put my oars and went home. But
Huh.
yeah, it depends on the run size. And again, Bob had a good point. It's not more anglers. There are fewer anglers than there were in the 70s. It's that they're concentrated where the majority of the fish are. So I don't know if it's busier or if just that river is busier.
Gotcha. Okay. And so I don't want to forget about Anchored, because that's, we talked about that at the start. So maybe you can talk a little bit about why you started that podcast, and then what you plan, kind of what your goal is with that, and kind of maybe for somebody that's never listened to it before, what maybe you can describe it.
Yeah, I'd love to. It's my favorite project I've ever done.
Nice.
And hopefully remains that way. Yeah. I was guiding on the Dean, and I had been guiding for a few years at that point. And I have a brain. I don't know if you can tell by listening to me speak. I go 100 miles a freaking minute. Like, I cannot stop. And both body and mind, they're always going. So by the time you get to year 3 of guiding and you've got the same clients and they know what you want them to do, you're standing on the bank, and apart from being on grizzly bear duty, you're literally staring at them.
Yeah.
But after day 3, they don't want to talk to you about things anymore. They just want you out of their face.
Yeah.
And I would actually go insane. So, I completed a couple college courses on the river for your correspondence, and then decided I didn't need those college courses. And I thought, well, what the hell else am I going to do? Well, I need to educate myself. Like, there's no such thing as boredom in my world. I like to take spare time and educate myself. And what better way than to have a podcast on in your Patagonia Better sweater sleeve, because there's a little zip there. And learn while you're standing there. So I started just getting into these really interesting episodes, and I thought, shit, I think I want to have a podcast. And I had been filming my television show. I'm kind of moving ahead, but I had just finished wrapping up filming my television series. And because I'm really interested in stories, the show is based on people's stories. But I was finding that my hour-and-a-half long interviews were being edited down to 3 minutes. Do you know, like they talk about killing babies in your writing, when you have to cut out words to say you're killing babies. Okay. Killing like an hour and 27 minutes of my interviews was like pulling my fingernails off. And, so I thought I've got to take the reins on this. I'm going to start my own podcast. It's going to be uncensored. I'm going to say whatever I want to say. And
these were these were your interviews. Like, you had an interview with like 60 Minutes. You've done a lot of shows. Is that kind of what you're talking?
Oh no, I had a television series, but it is on the World Fishing Network, which is a subscription channel. So a lot of people don't even know that.
Oh, gotcha. Wow.
Yeah, which is actually, that's probably my best project I've ever done. It's called Shoreline's April Vokey, but it's on such a piss poor channel that not everyone can see it, which is a real shame. And excuse me, the company owns it, the network owns it outright, so I can't even share it on my end.
No kidding.
No, it's really disappointing. Wow. But yeah, it is the audio. It is, my television series is the video version of the podcast shot with red cams and destination. Like, it is.
Okay.
Yeah. It's not a lot. There's not a lot of fish caught. That was never the premise of the show, but it's definitely, it's visual tales.
Gotcha. Cool.
Yeah. So I thought, well, what's the next best thing? What can I control? I'm going to make a podcast. No one's going to listen to it, but the stories will be documented. We're losing a lot of these great men and women who I'd interviewed on the show. And I thought, because the show is actually about, it's about my reading list I'd had. Anyway, I don't want to go into crazy big tangent or big talk about the show, but I'm really passionate about reading. And I thought, well, I can't make people read. Like, they're just not, my generation's not reading.
No.
They don't have time for it. Look at me standing on the river here. I'm not reading. I'm listening. I'm going to get them to listen. That's why I'm going to do it. Mm-hmm. So I wanted to save our history and do it that way. I had gotten to the point, Dave, where I was fishing bamboo and I was fishing woven leaders, and like I was trying to make it not harder on myself, but just a little more, I don't know, a little bit more of a quality experience. And for me, that is, I like rolling I like the feel of bamboo, rolling it in my fingers while I'm fishing, and I get off on like opening my Wheatley box and seeing old style flies. It's enjoyable for me. It's an artistic feel.
Yeah. And
I had been at the point though where even that wasn't doing it for me. And so the next thing that just kind of happened organically is, because I do read a lot, I would read Hag Brown, and I was so intrigued by him and his writing. And when I read his words, and when I read his words, they strike something in me that I can't explain. It's so, it makes me want to cry just thinking about it. And so I started kind of going down a different path. I thought, well, I'm now fly fishing. I'm now using bamboo. Like, what's the next step? So I thought, well, I'm going to go to Heg Brown's rivers, and I'm going to try to do, walk in the same footsteps he did, like literally, not figuratively, but literally.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, there aren't fish in half those rivers anymore, but it was, excuse me, it was so cool to just be like, hey, Heg Brown, if you're watching, like, this is so cool, man. You walked on this trail. And I like go to his house on Vancouver Island and look at it and know that, like, I'd envision him walking in and out of the door every day. And that makes me sound like an absolute stalker for sure. But it just brought a different level of appreciation to my fishing. And so that was where my passion for preserving our history came. I thought, well, maybe the next step for a lot of anglers is maybe if they know the history of the sport, it'll bring back some of that enjoyment. Maybe we don't have the fish numbers we had, but we will always have their stories. And maybe we can weigh on them to find a little bit more appreciation and enjoyment.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it's great.
Yeah. So that's how the podcast started.
Sorry. Yeah, no, you've done a good job with it. I've enjoyed listening to the stories, and you've had a pretty diverse list of guests. I mean, all the way up to Donald Trump Jr., right?
Yeah, my least listened to episode.
Oh, there you go. It was at least, so you'd think that one would actually get a lot of listens, but it's funny because it's weird, about the shows. I mean, I think I've listened to a lot of your shows, and there's I just love listening to the stories. And on my podcast, my most listened to episode is, I think, still the Deck Hogan episode, which, it wasn't really, and Deck's obviously an amazing guy, and he talked a lot about fly fishing, but a big part of that show was he was talking about some of the issues he had with a recent book he published, or that I was published, or with his publisher anyways. And it was this thing where I just had him on the show because I had the publisher kind of on the show and we got into it. So I kind of have both stories. That's basically the reason. And, and people, so it's got way more listens, right? And I think just because of that controversy, I guess, or maybe, I mean, obviously Deck's big, but I hope to have Deck on to just do a full show of, all fishing and that sort of thing. But so, yeah, I don't know. It's kind of interesting.
But I think people, Dave, like, a lot of people anyway, my listeners anyway, like a bit of behind the scenes. Like, how-tos are so in your face everywhere today.
Yeah.
And don't get me wrong, there's definitely a time and a place for it, but I want to hear what Deck's experience was with the publisher for sure.
Yeah, there you go.
Have you found yourself in a situation yet where you've had to call a lawyer to make sure you don't get sued?
I haven't, although I did a recent episode. So it's funny because I know you have Rio, obviously is a huge company and they're, amazing. And Simon was on my show in episode 11. Amazing guy. But I had a guy on recently, I think it was episode 20. Actually, I think it was just the episode before this one. Or no. So your episode is going to be wetflyswing.com/30. And in episode 28, I had Barney on, Barney Wong, and he talked about spey lines. Mm-hmm. And he just talked about we talked a little bit about how he's seeing a difference in weight sinking rates with spey lines. And like, he talked about some companies, because I was out with him. He's local in our area in Portland, and I was on the river and we were just testing lines, like sinking rates. And I am not, to be honest with you, it's funny because with the whole spey game and stuff, I was late to the game. My dad taught me single-handed. I kind of held out forever, finally got into spey. So, but I'm not as up on the knowledge as some of these people. And this guy is like, he is totally into it. Like he just loves like nerding out on lines.
Yeah.
And he talked about how like the Rio line sinks differently and, this line sinks differently. It wasn't like a bad thing, like he was calling, anybody out, but he was just basically saying, hey, we should have a standard, people should know what they're getting. And I kind of called him out a little bit because I said, well, a lot of people are just getting into it and they, they don't know all this stuff. So anyways, but that was an episode where it was like, well, I guess if Simon listens to this, and I hope he does, maybe he feels like that he kind of called out their lines a little bit, but I don't know. So that was one. I don't think I need a lawyer, but it was one that got me thinking a little bit. The first one, at least. Oh,
you're getting off easy. It'll get worse.
Really?
I've had guests I have literally had guests throw other companies and other guests under the bus so bad legally that I've had to call a lawyer and make sure I wouldn't get sued for being the person in the middle. Yeah. You'll get some interesting people for sure. Get some interesting stories. Yeah.
So I haven't got there yet, but yeah, I think it's been It's been pretty good. I mean, I've loved it. I mean, I started the podcast, like I said, I just had this passion for listening to podcasts, and since I've been doing it now, it's one of those things where it's just so much fun talking to you, and people like yourself and everybody out there trying to do the same thing, document. I do a little bit of the tip stuff, but I'm getting to this point now where it's like, how many steelhead tips can you talk about, right?
Yeah, it depends. I mean, maybe there's that thing again. It depends. Maybe if that's your thing, then maybe you'll want to talk about it all day, every day.
That's true. Well, I'm trying to do an equal amount of, a little bit of equal stories along with some of the tips, but well, let's see, where are we at here? I'm just trying to, I think a bunch of the questions I was going to ask you, we probably won't be able to get to, but I did have a few I wanted to highlight here. Well, one, you mentioned on books, you do have your piece where you're really into reading, some of the books. Do you have a favorite that you would recommend for somebody, a fly fishing book?
I have lots of favorites. So which area of fly fishing experience, how-tos, casting, fishing?
So, yeah. How about casting?
Spey or single hand?
Spey.
Alber's book.
Okay.
Okay. I remember the first time I read Al's book.
Yep.
It was right after he published it. And I thought, yeah, no, this is not for me. And I put it down. I picked it up a few years later after I'd actually really been working on my casting, and I got most of it, and I put it back down and I read it again, and I understood absolutely everything to the point where I really want I need to sit down with Al to talk to him about a lot of the physics that he talks about in the book. But his book is discouraged. It might be intimidating the first time you read it, but I promise that every time you read it, you will take something else out of that book.
Nice.
That for me is the spey casting book. Yeah, it's probably. Cool. I'm sure Simon's probably done something great. I just haven't read it yet. But Al's book spoke to as an instructor for me and my terminology. I really enjoyed his book.
Oh, that's cool. Yeah, I'll note that in the show notes here at episode 30. But yeah, Simon, his videos are the one that kind of helped me get going when I first started learning about it. Actually, Dave, video is a totally different story. Yeah.
Simon's 3-disc Rio video DVD, like I'm talking, it makes any book pales in comparison. Any book pales in comparison compared to the DVD. I watched that thing on repeat. It was my life.
Nice. Is that what was your transition into spey like for you? Was it I know you're probably flailing doing that stuff, but did you read everything and then jump into it, or how did that all go?
How old was I? I was 21. I just turned 21, and I was not an exceptional single hand caster either. And I had heard about these spey rods. Somebody told, I think it was because I was fishing the Thompson. And somebody had mentioned these 200 rods, and just all I heard was casting further. That's all I could hear when they were talking about it. And it just kind of went from that. I think I fished with a friend of mine, and he let me borrow one of his rods that day. And I was obviously taken by it. I loved it. And then that same fall or the following year, I can't remember if it was the same year or the following year, but the Log Cabin Pub had an annual fundraiser every year. And money went to like the park the Greasehole Park on the river. And anyway, long story short, Steve Choate from Loomis at the time had always donated a rod. And I was in the bathroom, and I remember Scott Baker McGarvey going, "Where's Vokey? Vokey!" And I came out, and they're like, "The rod's here." And it was like up for auction, and everyone knew I wanted it, so nobody really bid on it. And I had no money, so I was really freaking out because I was like, "How am I going to pay for this?" And somebody said, "Choate, will you throw in a lesson for her?" And he was like purple. His face was purple. He did not want me buying I don't know. You have to know Steve, but I think in his head there was a bit of like, this chick is totally about to waste my time, and I'm going to have to spend a whole day on a Thompson teaching her. But anyway, he was pressured into it. I bid on the rod. I got the rod for a great price because no one else bid on it. And I got Steve for the day.
Oh, cool.
And we had the most incredible time. And he is such a special, special man. And he would have been my spey mentor, I guess. It was just for the day. I mean, really, my tuition with him was just for the day. But the whole experience was so incredible that I knew that was going to be the next step in my life.
Yeah. Cool.
Yeah.
Cool. Yeah. It's definitely, it's not always an easy thing for people to get into, but there's so many resources. Like I was just, again, had another guy on, the James Miller, and he was talking about the Skagit Master, which I never even watched, but I mean, I'm going to. And but there's a ton of great resources out there. I mean, I guess there's more and more, especially with YouTube and as people get into it.
Yeah, it's interesting though. I have found, especially now that I actually feel like I do know what I'm talking about with spay casting. Obviously, there's always 10 million things to learn, but
yeah,
I definitely really feel like I can have a decent conversation about spay casting. When I go on to YouTube now, my stomach gets upset at some of the lessons and people I see on there giving advice. And some of these people are like flagged as some of the best in the world. And I'm watching them going, you're kidding, right?
Oh,
like,
really?
Do you people not see what, like, he's creeping his rod like 2 feet forward on his cast? Huh. Like, so, YouTube, be careful. DVDs definitely are probably a little safer for the most part.
Yeah.
So just be cautious some of the shit that's out there.
Yeah. Till YouTube's wide open.
Self-included. Anything that you've seen of mine that's filmed over 10 years ago, stay away from it with a 10-foot pole. Do not touch it.
I'll note that. Yeah, I won't leak to any of your older stuff in this one.
You can leak it, but oh my God, do not live by it. Do not listen to me. Do not follow me. Do not imitate me.
Nice.
Just keep walking. It was tragic.
Cool. So maybe you can talk about so guiding. Why did you get into guiding, and why did you get out of guiding?
Yeah, I wanted to make money doing what I loved.
Yeah.
And I just you want to do something every day. You can't afford to do it every day. So what do? You get paid to do it every day. Yep. And that was it. That's why I got into it. Mm-hmm. I loved guiding till about the 8th year.
Yeah.
And then it started to weigh on me. It was the people. People, I always hear different reasons why guides get the shits with other people. But for me, it was that my brain, I couldn't handle it. I would be standing out there. My brain is ticking. And there's just so many other things I want to do.
Yeah.
And I am a businesswoman. Like, at the end of the day, I'm an angler first, but I am still a businesswoman. And I would be standing there being like, this is not making good use of my time. I could be making 4 times the amount of money doing something else in a fraction of the time. And that would then give me more time to go fishing for myself, or give me more money to go and buy myself a trip somewhere else.
Right.
Why am I standing here for $25 a fucking hour? Mm-hmm. It's wasting my life away. So that was it for me. I always said I would do 10 years. I'm big in investing. I've got money put away. So I was always able to be like, okay, I've got like a backup plan. But I see these guys who have been guiding, that's their plan for like 40 years. They've got no money invested. They've got no backup plan.
Right.
And then, after a few years, or after they hit the age of 50, they're stuck.
Yeah.
And I just didn't want to be that person. So I said, I'll set it at 10 years and then I'm out. And that's exactly what I did.
Yeah. It's interesting you say the word stuck, because it seems like, I've talked to a lot of guides here, that some that are still in it, and it seems like some just really love it. And I think maybe, I'm not sure if they feel like they're stuck or not, but I think a lot of them, they do get out and move into different parts of the fly fishing world and, become reps or, whatever. But yours is interesting because you've got a business going. And what is your business? I mean, what is if you had to tell somebody what your, how you make money at your business is, you guide, right? You still own a guiding company?
Yeah. I mean, I make obviously booking commissions off people who book through me, and I feel like that's more than fair. It doesn't cost the consumer anything. And I'm there for them. Like, if you book through me, then like, I do not need the 15% bad enough to put you in bad hands.
Right.
If you book through me, I'm going to make damn sure that you're in good hands, because it's not worth it for me to do it, to give you a bad experience.
And word of mouth, but no good business owner or whatever, that would kill you.
No, so I guess I make some money off of booking commissions. I've got, there's some specifics to that I probably will keep internal, but that definitely makes sense for me, that I've got worked out with some travel companies that I work with. Mm-hmm. But no, I make money. Obviously, when I had television, there was a bit of money there, but not really. The podcast pulls in an income now. Mm-hmm. My sponsors pull in an income. Merchandise pulls in an income.
Yep. So
let me just go. Everything. That's cool. It's I've done this since I started my company. Make a list of what you're going to pull income in from, and then set goals to be able to manufacture that many shirts, or put out however many episodes or how many articles. And then you just decide the amount of money you need to make in the year, and then you hustle to make it happen.
Yep. There you go. That's great advice too. Just set some goals and go for it.
Yeah.
Cool. So, well, we are getting pretty close here. I just had a couple more I wanted to check in with you here. First,
yeah, and Dave, she's sleeping, so don't worry about the time. If you want to throw them at me, go for it.
Okay, perfect, great, yeah. Well, one of them I always like to ask is on flies. Just if you tell me your 2 go-to flies for steelhead, or maybe your 1 or 2 flies.
Yeah. So a glow bug.
Really?
For sure. Yeah. No, Dave, come on. Oh
gosh! Wow, that. I'm trying to think if anybody threw that out at me. That was nice.
No. I mean, if it floats your boat, fine, but it does not do it for me. But now, I like fishing a Lady Caroline. I think it's, I like the history behind it. I think it's romantic and it catches fish.
Yeah.
So the Lady Caroline, and then anything black and blue with an egg-sucking head if I'm desperate.
Okay. Yep. Black and blue. Good.
Yeah, that's my go-to.
Yep. Nice. What about your, you live half the time in New Zealand now. Is that still correct?
Well, funny you should ask. Yes, no. I live half the year in Australia.
Oh.
But, and I've got to be so careful with what I let out right now, because it could be next year and it could be 5 years, but the 6 month in Australia will end up very soon being 6 months in New Zealand. Yeah.
Oh yeah. There you go.
Yeah. Look, I like Australia. It's just, and the fishing's amazing, but it's just not, I'd rather live in New Zealand.
Nice. Yeah. It's a different place. I haven't been to either, but yeah, amazing fishing, but yeah, just the environment, the natural resources it's a different level.
Oh, and the people, it is so I live 6 months a year in BC and then 6 months a year in Manly, Australia. So when I met my husband, he's an Australian, and I had actually just been about to buy a piece of property in Roatan, and we met on a trip in Norway just randomly. And we both thought, well, you know what, if this works, excuse me, if this works, then instead of Roatan, which was actually dodging a bullet, I'll live half the year in Australia. So I moved there with him for 6 months. Give me 1 second, Dave.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah.
And yeah, but he lives in Manly, Australia. He's more of he's a surfing city kind of guy.
Mm-hmm.
He's not like a pretty boy, but he's definitely more city than I am. People don't know this. I'm not social. I don't do social. I don't do dinners with friends. It's just not my thing. I've got a handful of good friends. I don't like parties. I don't go out. I don't go to the bar. I'm just really boring.
Yeah.
And, but my husband is like Little Miss driving, he's Little Miss Daisy. He's freaking everywhere. He loves socializing. And so the first few years I could handle, I could handle Manly, but eventually it starts to really weigh on you to the point where you just never leave in the house because your house is quiet and outside's not. And thank God, because he comes into my BC place every year for anywhere from 4 to 6 weeks. He started to get a little bit depressed when we would leave BC.
Oh, really?
And it was starting to, he was starting to also feel the impact of the city in Australia. So we're finally, after 5 years or almost 6 years, we're finally at a point where we both agree that Manly is not working for us. And we still need to be in the Southern Hemisphere for our families, for his family, for half the year. Mm-hmm. And we fish a ton in New Zealand. He grew up fishing in New Zealand. And it looks like we are looking to, again, without saying too much, maybe, possibly starting a small fishing operation in New Zealand. Who knows? We'll see. It's his dream. I don't want to guide again.
Sure.
But you know what? If I had to do it a couple days a week and it was a different lifestyle, was sight fishing in small New Zealand streams, then I could be convinced.
Yeah. A little different than sitting there on a steelhead run in the cold, maybe.
Well, and I love that too. It's just, look, who knows? But yes, we live 6 months a year in the Southern Hemisphere.
Cool. Well, we'll see. These episodes will live out there for a long time, so it'll be fun. It'll be fun to listen to this. If somebody's listening right now 3 years later, and they'll know exactly what you're up to. So it'll be cool.
Yeah, exactly.
You're definitely not leaving the fly fishing world, right?
Oh God, no. Yeah. No. In fact, I've just there's a lot of change. There are so many changes happening right now.
Yeah.
And if anything, I've just taken a big step back into it. So you guys are going to be seeing a lot of me.
Cool.
Yeah.
Cool. So what do you, if you look out at your life after we're all gone in 50 or 100 years, what would you like to be remembered for?
Oh, you just threw that question on me. I throw that on my people all the time.
Oh, you do?
But but I've never actually thought about it, what I want. Wow. Yeah, you know, I really, it has changed that my answer to that question has changed so much over the years. Definitely, like the first thing that came through my mind when you asked that is I just want people to remember me as being someone who tried her best to do the best she could. It's not always the best decision. I've been in the public eye since I was really young. You obviously are going to make mistakes and create enemies at a really early age by accident. And but I've just tried my hardest, you know. And I think what I really want is I want women and young men and people getting into the industry to look at the things I've done and be like, okay, April's been really vocal about like that was a mistake. She wishes she wouldn't do that again. And I want them to learn from that so they don't make the same mistakes. So that they can just avoid the headache. But I mean, the argument is maybe you can't be the best that you can be unless you learn from those mistakes. So yeah, I think I just want people to just know that I tried my hardest. I don't think I want them to remember me as anything in particular other than April. This is a really selfish answer, but I want my daughter just to remember me as like a really good mom who worked hard to show her the beauty in the world and that she can live her life differently than most people in the world. And just because 95% of the people out there might not be doing what they love doesn't mean that that's because it's hard. It means it's because they either don't know how to do it or they don't have the desire to do it. Yeah. And so mostly my answer is it's for my daughter, not for the rest of the world. That's right. Sorry, everybody. I care about you, but not as much as my kid. Yeah. Yeah.
You have a 7-month-old girl there. How has that changed your fishing or your life?
Dave, I literally just got butterflies in my stomach to the point where my voice almost changed. I have never been so fulfilled in my entire life. Cool. She is and I was not the woman who wanted to be a mom. Like I thought, I probably should. Yeah. I'm at the point where I'm traveling. I make good money. I travel. I've got everything. There's literally no reason for me not to have a child. I've got a great partner. And I kind of thought I just should have a kid. But now that I have one, I'm just so fulfilled. Like every day has a real new meaning. I'm literally sitting out in my parents' yard right now, looking at the garden. And I'm thinking, when I get off the phone with Dave, I'm going to show Adelaide those new roses. They're so beautiful. I can't wait to show her those. So, it's just been the best thing. How has it changed my fishing? It really, well, you know what? It has and it hasn't. So what time is it right now? It's 1:15, right?
Yeah, 1:15. Yep.
Oh,
yeah, we're at the same time. Yeah, we're at the same time. That's right.
Yeah. So last night at 12 hours ago at 1 a.m. in the morning, I just canceled my Norway trip.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So Adelaide's been hunting with me since she was 3 weeks old. Adelaide has put in more hunting days this year than my buddy. I think the kids put in 30 hunting days with me.
What kind of hunting?
I bow hunt.
Oh, for just big game?
Well, in BC for grouse, and I will be going, out for deer this year. But I got a deer in Australia just a few months back, and Adelaide she would call in deer with me because the fallows, you call in a fallow, it's like, meh, meh, meh. Yeah. And so when she would fuss, she kind of sounded like that, and we'd call in deer. It was so cool. Yeah. So she's been fishing with me in New Zealand. She's been everywhere, but we just traveled. We had 2 weeks in Fiji, and we just came back to Canada. We had 20 hours in the air. No problem. She was great. But her sleep was thrown off for a bit, and I thought, Norway it'll be all right. And because I was going, and I'll save you all the logistics, you don't need to know about travel plans, but I was going to Norway, and I knew it was going to be a lot to go from Orlando to Norway and back, because, you got to fly, there's a layover in Frankfurt, then you got to go to Oslo, but then you got to get to Trondheim, and then you got to drive 2 hours to the river. The kid can handle it. She's good. She's done it. But then this happens. I get a message from the lodge owner, and he says, hey, listen, fishing is really bad right now. We haven't had rain. I don't want you guys to come all this way. And I'm solo, right? Like Charles isn't with me for most of the year. And so he goes, I don't want you to come all this way by yourself and sit on the beach the whole time. And I thought, well, that's cool. I was going to fish pretty relaxed anyway. And then I started thinking, but then what? I'm waiting all week for rain. And then what? Starts pouring rain. I've got Adelaide. But again, she hikes in the rain. She can handle it. So she has affected my fishing, and she hasn't. It's yes and no. She's made a difference. Yeah.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, my kids are pretty much the reason why I'm doing this podcast right now. That's how I got started.
How's that?
Well, so my story's a little interesting too. I've talked a little bit about it here. And, but yeah, so a few years ago, I had my first, a few years ago, it's my second, so I guess she's 4 now. And I realized that I need to make some more money. I was 2 kids and all that stuff. So I started learning about online business. Which sounds probably really boring to a lot of people, but I was like, well, what can I do that I can make money on the side? And yeah, I kind of loved it, started learning about it. So anyways, full circle, the podcasting thing kind of was part of that. Like I listened to a lot of business podcasts and stuff. And it's like I said, I got addicted to podcasts and I was like, so I want to start a podcast, but what do I want to do it in? And that's how this came to be. Because of my passion for Steelhead. Yeah.
Extra money thing. Why didn't you think to guide 1 day a week?
What's that?
You didn't think to maybe guide 1 day a week, or? Yeah,
well, that's the funny thing about the guiding thing. And I've talked a little bit about that, but I don't like guiding. I've never, and I've talked to Tom Larimer. Well, he's not a good example. Duran Torre. I mean, I've talked to people that you could just hear it pouring from. They love guiding. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah,
it's the grace. And that was never me. My dad guided forever. And then I did a little, and I guided with him, and then I guided a little on my own. I just never liked, I think it was the pressure, whatever it was. I probably wasn't that great of a guide either. And so I just knew that wasn't the thing for me. And, and so anyways, I came to this podcast, and the podcast now isn't about making money. It's just really a passionate thing. I hope that eventually I can maybe, get some, monetization just to cover things or whatever. But, no, that's kind of how I got into this whole thing. It started with my second kid. And, you never know where things go. That's where life is kind of fun that way.
Yeah, not kind of. That's awesome.
Yeah. But, so anyways, I'm going to let you go here pretty quick, but I got a quick little rapid fire, like 4 questions here. If you got a few more minutes,
go for it.
So your bucket list destination, do you have one?
I hate that. Like, what in the blasted hell is a bucket list?
Oh, sorry. Yeah. You got it right. I mean,
no, I don't have a bucket list.
You don't?
No, I want to go to Russia. My Russia trip was canceled last year and I can't go back. I could go back this year, but I don't feel it's fair this year. So I'll probably do Russia next year.
Okay.
But yeah, no, that's probably about it. My bucket list is, I want to explore more rivers in BC that are quiet and not talked about.
Nice. And your best steelhead tip for somebody that's out there trying to get into their first few steelhead?
Keep your fly in the water.
Yep.
Like literally dangle it at your feet. Just don't take it out of the water. Make a bad cast, leave it. Don't fix your cast. Nice.
And does that, do you find, that's the thing when you're swinging your fly, are you always kind of trying different, swinging it differently at different speeds as you're fishing, or do you get a run dialed in and you just kind of know how to fish it?
No, I don't think I have anything dialed in. Everything fluctuates with water levels, but I try to look to make sure that I'm going the right speed for maybe the temperature of the day, or it depends if I'm fishing for winter run or summer run fish, but, no, I don't say, I definitely don't do too much messing around with my fly. Yep. I don't know. It's kind of mindless for me, to be totally honest with you. I think that's why I like swinging, is that it's kind of just a moment to meditate.
Yeah.
I mean, we could get all nerdy about, I try to have it so that the hook is facing on a 45-degree angle. Yeah. I don't know. It's just, I don't know. So what do you,
go ahead. When you're sitting out there on the run, what's typically going through your mind? other than the fish, the fishing stuff.
No, I don't think the fishing stuff is really going through my mind. If I'm in a real juicy spot, I'm like, this is for sure. This is going to happen. No, I think that's what when I'm casting, I'm definitely thinking about my casting, but when I'm swinging, it's one of the only times that I actually really don't think about anything.
Yep.
I really don't. I actually truly don't think about anything. It's probably the closest thing I've got to meditation.
That's it. Yeah. That's totally I don't do any I've tried a little bit, but yeah, I think that's probably as close as I get to meditating as well, as out there in a steelhead run.
Yeah. Or I'm singing. And again, I'm not thinking. I'm either being like, oh yeah, I'm singing really good. I wish someone heard this right now.
That's right. Yeah, that's why I mentioned that 60 Minutes piece. I was kind of catching some of that online. Have you done quite a few of those kind of episodes on the kind of national TV?
I don't think so. No.
Yeah.
No.
Okay. So that was kind of a one, and that kind of, I can't remember what what the focus was on that. It was more, do you remember that one?
Yeah. I mean, I've done obviously a bunch of TV stuff. I don't know it gets aired where. I don't own a television, and they usually don't tell you. 60 Minutes told me when it would air, but most people just don't even tell me when it airs. So I hear about it like a year later. Someone's like, "Oh, I saw you on whatever," and I'm going, "Oh yeah, I forgot that happened." Gotcha. 60 Minutes was really cool. They actually reached out to me and they said, I think that I really threw them off guard. They said, "We want to come in and do a story about you." And I just assumed they wanted to do a story about women in fly fishing. That's just like the thing these days, right? And said, "Yeah, I don't know. Where do you want? Are you going to fly me in?" "Well, no, we want to come to you on the Dean." I was guiding on the Dean at the time, and we just really didn't need the pressure or the publicity on the Dean. It just was unnecessary. And Stevie, my brother-in-law, and I, he also was guiding with me. We had a big talk about it, and it was like, well, we really don't need the public's eye on this. We don't need any attention, because if you want to do something public like that, you usually want to have something that you can promote to fix, like from a conservation stance, either to fix or to sell, right? It's one or the other. And I didn't have anything to sell. I mean, I do, but not through 60 Minutes. And I didn't need them from a conservation stance in the Dean. And so I turned them down. And they were like, no, you don't, no. We're 60 Minutes. I'm like, yeah, no, I know who you are. But
wow.
I don't think so. And then I talked to Stevie and we were like, well, the Bulkley really needs some help right now with all the stuff that was happening with LNG.
Oh, yeah.
And so I thought, well, let's do that. They said, well, do you have any other ships? So I'm going to Belize. And I remember we were in the flats boat. They had spent I think their budget was like $250,000 or something.
Jeez.
And something ridiculous. And they were going to come to Belize and also come to BC. And I've got to say, just kind of as a side note, Dave, these guys were the most incredible, amazing. Like, I felt like I was with family.
No kidding.
I have filmed with some really wonderful people, and these guys, they're professional. I just can't say enough about them. They were incredible. Wow. And we were in the flats boat, and they go, and I go, okay, so what do you want to know specifically about women and fly fishing? And I remember Mark goes, no, this isn't about women and fly fishing. This is about you. And I think I went like white, because he's like, are you okay? And I go, yeah, but me, what? And so that really threw me off. And it put a lot of pressure on. It took me a while to just kind of like chill out about it. So then, I mean, everything went well. We teamed up with Frontier Far West. Derek, who owns the lodge, was so accommodating. And the only thing that I have to be completely transparent about, just even for my own integrity and for Derek, was we did talk a lot about conservation, and it was brought up often, and it was definitely part of the premise, and it was edited out. So I think that was disappointing, and probably because the more that they dug into it, they probably realized, okay, this is huge, and we can't make it a piece about conservation and a personality.
Oh, right.
I would imagine. Again, I have no control over that. But yeah, that's kind of how it all came to be. And we don't have it in Canada. So my girlfriend Lisa was like streaming it she recorded it or something, and then shared it. And I was watching it on my iPhone with my parents. And of course I'm, saying motherfucker. And because every time I drop the fish, I can't help myself, right? I drop it.
Yep.
And I don't know what national television is. I don't watch television. And I didn't realize it. I thought they had to censor it. They don't censor that stuff.
They didn't censor it?
No.
Oh, wow.
Oh, and then I get an email from Joan Wolfe, and she goes, it's one of the most embarrassing moments of my life. She goes, you're talented. You put in so many hours to know what you know, and you're beautiful. You do not need to speak like that. And I wanted to die.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah. And my mom, I mean, she was watching it beside me. She goes, well, it's good to see that you showed your true colors on that.
Well, you know what's interesting about that, because I mean, I'm pretty much like a sailor as well, but when I get on the podcast, I don't really, use any of that language. In fact, I've had a couple guests, where it comes up, and I've kind of been that thing like, well, I don't have to edit it, right? I can just do an explicit sort of thing to cover things, but it seems like, you want to hear people's true self, right? That's what you want to hear. You don't want to edit that stuff.
No, I had some man get mad. He goes, why does Dave McCoy have to swear so much in his episode? And I said, well, hey, listen now. The whole point, the reason why you're listening is because you want to hear You don't want the sound bites. You want to hear people, not just their stories, but like how people don't remember what you say. They remember how you say it.
Yeah.
So you want to
right.
hear that person. You want to get a feel for them and what they're really like.
Mm-hmm.
If that's what they speak like, let them. And then I took it one step further and started reading all the papers from Princeton and Harvard about why intelligent people actually use profanity.
Oh, really?
If you really dive in to the reasons why educated, intelligent, well-spoken people with large vocabularies use profanity, you may take a step back. There are reasons and times and places where it is fitting and best appropriate to use profanity, even though it's offensive to some. And then you get into the whole, like, I think it's etymology. Is that the meaning where meaning of words comes from?
Etymology. I think that's right.
Yeah, no, not bugs, not
bugs, not etymology, right?
Yeah. But yeah, and a lot of it's not even that offensive when you really look at it. So
no, and I mean that's the thing. I think so. Yeah, I guess you have to coach me here. So on the podcast, it's just a couple of clicks, right? Explicit sort of thing, because I think we've had a little bit of language.
Put explicit, and if you don't like it, sorry, don't listen.
That's all there is.
Like I'm so tired of living this life of trying to make everyone happy. Do you know that we're in a world, Dave, where you can't even wear too much bronzer on your face without people saying that you're trying to look African American?
Wow.
The world is insane. I'm sorry that you don't like it when I say fuck.
That's right. That's
just how it goes.
We've become too, it's funny because we had that conversation earlier, but we've kind of become too politically correct in a lot of cases.
Oh, I'm just over it. Honestly, I'm going to go hide down south in New Zealand. I'm going to hide up north in Canada, and end the story. You're
lucky. You could disappear like that. No, this has been awesome. I just before I let you go, I just wanted to have two more for you. Do you have a story, maybe a short story about somewhere in your life that helped you kind of get you where you are? I mean, you started when you were 18 fly fishing, and then earlier fishing. Was there something along the way, or you pretty much knew where you were going from day one?
Yeah, I think I knew where I was going from day one. It changed. There were things. I remember when I was really young, I wanted to have a television show so bad.
Oh, cool.
And I look back now and I kind of giggle. It's like, really, why? Why did you want a television show? And now that I've had a television show, I think it's hilarious because I certainly don't want that now.
Oh, yeah.
But did you say is there a story about a person or a moment?
Yeah, no, I was thinking more of a moment, maybe like a kind of a point in your life that you remember. Yeah, that kind of a transition point that kind of put you on a different trajectory towards where you are now.
Yeah, there's a few. I think the big one was when I came home when I was 18 and I'd seen those guys fly fishing, and my dad loves to tell it about how I came home in a daze. And he said, "What's wrong?" And I saw the most incredible thing today. There's got to be a way to make a living doing it. That was probably the big thing. And then, the rest was all just pretty organic. You try selling certain things. It doesn't work. You try doing a certain role. You don't like it. Not one real big thing that I can think of at the moment. They're all little things that all kind of work together. I can honestly say that I take I think you're presented with opportunity, and either you take it or you don't. And maybe I was too aggressive and too ambitious in the beginning. I'm sure it turned a lot of people off. That's who I was. And there's a lot of reasons from my past why I was like that. I'm not going to apologize for it. Mm-hmm. But I think that the one thing that I did do was I looked at every opportunity and what I was able to do, and still as a businesswoman I'm able to do today, is look at an opportunity and figure out a way how to kill 10 birds with that one stone. Mm-hmm. I always can think of a way to monetize something. I can always think of a way for it to benefit somebody. I can always think of it to make people happy. There's always ways to make a situation work for everybody. And you just have to think outside the box and look at every opportunity differently. Don't be lazy, sleep less, give back, and the universe will give back to you. It's as simple as that.
Nice. Yeah, that's a perfect way to sum it up. So in the next 6 months or so, do you have anything going on? Anything new we can expect from you?
Big time, yeah. So Norway is canceled, but I'll be heading up to my place in the Bulkley. Adelaide and I will be up there this year. Well, okay, so in August I've got to go back to Australia. I'm going to try to get my first marlin on the fly.
Oh, wow.
This August, and let's see how that goes, because it's been 5 years now in the making and I still haven't landed one yet. And then her and I come back to camp. We're in BC in camp from September till January. I think we'll freeze to death, so we're going to have to work around that. So that's like the 6-month schedule. And then what I can tell you that doesn't go against my NDA is I am about actually my next call from you is with my lawyer. We are about 3 days away from signing a contract, and I have been bought.
You've been bought.
I've been bought. I've sold the company. I sold the company. I sold the podcast. I sold myself, and I'm about to enter into a very exciting new relationship with a company I firmly believe in, and I think we're going to do some really, really wonderful, wonderful things together. And I hope that doesn't go against my NDA. Oh God, Pray to God, it does not go against my NDA.
That's awesome.
Yeah, let's say this. Let's say instead of being bought, I've been okay, let's keep this legal. I have allegedly been bought. No, I've teamed up with a really fantastic network of people, and I'm really excited to move forward with them. So I'm excited to share all that with you guys when I'm allowed to. Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah. Well, that's huge news. I'll be looking forward to that for sure. Nice. Well, April, I want to thank you for coming on here. We pushed a little bit over our time here, but this has been a ton of fun. And I just want to thank you again for the inspiration that anchored, and that's kind of where I first connected with you, and it inspired me to do what I'm doing here. So I just wanted to thank you for that again.
Oh, thanks, Dave. Hey, Dave, one last thing, because it's important both of us as podcasters.
Yep.
This whole new merge does not change any of my creative control. I don't want anyone thinking that I would ever, and this is for young men, young women, young entrepreneurs, for yourself, no amount of money could ever allow me to give up reins on my own creative control and my integrity. So just that's like my parting words of advice to everybody. Just follow your heart, stay true to yourself, even in big merges, and it will always work out better for you in the end. So
yeah, that's cool.
Yeah.
I was on a note, I might get sued for this one as well, but I use Lipson as my host, for the podcast, and I love them. They've been great, really good people there. But on your lines of like giving yourself up, I have heard that I think it's not Anchored, but Anchor. I think there's another podcast. There's some other hosting things out there that will host your stuff. Mm-hmm. And I've been told that some of those, you sell yourself, like they take control of your stuff.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So, and that's just for those out there because I want to have more podcasters out there. I love the Fly Fishing podcast. I think there's a very few number. I'd love to have more. So just a heads up for those that, before you get into it, make sure that you're not writing selling your stuff out to people. And, so that is a reality.
Yeah, you don't have, and honestly, like with the waiting game, I remember I've spent so many years looking at my brand and looking at myself and going, God dang it. Like I stay so true to myself. Am I screwing myself over by staying so true? Like look at all these people selling cleavage shots, they're married or dating a professional photographer and all of these selfies. And I start thinking, good Lord, am I selling myself short? And you know what? If I had done any of those things that compromise my integrity, this new merge with these people I believe in never would have happened. So just stay true to yourself. And I promise you, like, say no to the people who want to use you for things you don't believe in. Say yes to the people that you love. Make relationships with them. Take the opportunities to make everyone happy. If you can, like the 10 birds, you don't have to kill them all with one stone, but it's nice to touch them all with one stone.
Yeah.
And at the end of the day, the universe it pays you back. I promise it'll all come right.
Cool. All right, April. Well, I'll let you get going. And I would love to, I'm moving into actually season 2 and 3, which is going to be more focused on trout. So I'm taking a little break from Steelhead, but, down the line, whatever, it'd be great to have you come on and talk maybe more about tips. So I just wanted to thank you again, and we'll keep in touch with you.
Hey, thanks for having me on. It's so cool to be able to yabber like this about myself. I never get to do that.
Totally. Yeah, great. All right. Well, talk to you soon.
Thanks, Dave.
All right, see you. Bye.
Bye.
So there you go. If you want to find all the show notes with all the links we covered, just go to wetflyswing.com/30. And also, please head on over to that same link and leave a short comment at the bottom of the blog post and let me know what you thought of the show. Thanks again for stopping by to check out the show today. I'm looking forward to catching up with you soon and hope to connect with you online or on the river.
Thanks for listening to the Wet Fly Swing Fly Fishing Show. For notes and links from this episode, visit wetflyswing.com. And if you found this episode helpful, please subscribe and leave a review on iTunes.